is full of weak and whimsical things. That's why I like it so much. It is so unforceful. It is so, as I say, weak and a little humorous. And the reason it's weak is it doesn't rely on large scale. It doesn't rely on multi-million-dollar budgets for advertising and marketing, and manipulating what shows up on internet site screens. We argue that you should love your neighbor and buy local. And in the footnotes, if you will, well, there are three main arguments, and then there are two of the five are in the footnotes. Near is better than far, small than big, and simple than complex. And in the footnotes, 5-point type, sans serif, of course, probably Geneva or Helvetica font. We say personal is better than corporate, and physical than abstract. And there are many important and good people who would disagree with you on those points, and they would argue that, well, this is all what you're arguing for is old school. It's agrarian. It's inefficient. There's so many inefficiencies in small family businesses that we have grown past those. And with the increase in scale, there's an increase in benefits, cost benefits that we pass on to the consumer, and many other things like that. But those systems are full of riddled with compromises. Major health food chains in the grocery side, for example, the Health Ranger Mike Adams has exposed as full of GMOs, full of pesticides, though they have kept their language brought from the founders of these giant national organic chains. They're not in practice that way anymore. And the reason those things happen, the turning away from the original vision, is because the scale problem and the for-profit demand, the demand for lucre and gain. Don Raines runs Don's Meats on Hickson Pike. He's a longtime entrepreneur. His family also butchers. Don, your dad founded Don's Meats. Tell us about him. He's been in the grave for 3 years. Your mother alive still, part-time at the store. Tell us about how you got into the meat business.
Well, I grew up in the meat business, David. My dad worked in grocery stores in the 50s, 60s, early 70s. And I would go into the meat markets with them and actually help them. And then in 1982, he went into business for himself. We bought an equipment in a tax auction and started what was then called Don's Meats and Things, Incorporated. And so in 1982, we started a local meat market. And, we prospered for a long time, for 10 years. And in the last few years, we ran into some, we learned a lot in those 10 years because we made some mistakes. The industry was changing. We didn't keep up with the changing times. Road construction hurt us. There were a lot of negative factors. So my dad downsized in 1992 and rebuilt the business to what it is today.
Well, now that was in the older shop in which you were occupied, that you occupied for I guess 10 years, from which you recently moved, right? So that was the shop then.
Right. I built
the downsized business was in that older shop, now abandoned.
Well, gone now. Those buildings are gone, And so 2 years ago, I started a building project, and we've been in our new building almost a year. As a matter of fact, it'll be end of August. And so we have slowly, through slow, steady growth, been increasing our business in the Hickson area.
How so?
Well, we slowly invest in equipment, slowly invest in products, and keep trying to grow our customer base. In the 90s, we didn't advertise at all. Now I do a little bit of radio advertising, a little bit of TV advertising, and those things have really helped us, get the word out that, we're a small local meat market. We'll cut special roast for you. We'll bring in special order stuff for you that the big guys won't. You want elk? Okay, I can order elk. If you can buy the quantity that I need to sell it in, then we can help you. You want a crown roast, you go into a lot of stores and you ask them for something, they don't even know what you're talking about. So I can have an intelligent conversation with the consumer, figure out what they want, and try to help them. So we offer a lot of customer service to help our customers to have a positive experience. And that's how we keep growing and keep building our customer base, by trying to satisfy the needs and trying to be personable with our customers.
Could you be specific? Give an example of a customer who came in just the other day who had a special problem, and how did you work with him or with her to solve it?
It can be as simple. I've had a customer that wanted some ground bison. Got them. I have customers that want whole hogs, for these special cookouts. So those are hard to come by, and I probably have sold 6 in the last month, a couple of 100-pounders, 2 60-pounders, and a 30-pounder,
Is that the whole pig?
The whole pig for a cookout. Yeah. Yeah. And I've got some, I do it every year.
Do you tell people how, if someone says a man comes in and says, I want to have this, but I don't really know what to do you give him a kind of a quick course on how to handle the cooking of that?
Oh, sure.
Or the gutting of that?
Well, it's already done. That part's already done. Now the head and feet are still on. If they want that removed, I'll take care of that for them. Yeah, sure. We will help our customers have a positive experience when it comes to the preparing of the product.
Well, I mentioned Don's Meats, Don Raines, the scale problem, and the idea that if you have a giant seller like Costco or Walmart or Food City, in the scale problem, you have increasing efficiencies. There are some good things there, but how is it that my listener needs to understand that when you have a larger enterprise with which you're dealing, making these small purchases, what do you not get? What can't you obtain? Is there something less in the satisfaction of dealing with a large supplier than a small shop such as Don's Meats?
Well, let me tell you a story about Wagyu briskets. I now sell.
What are they?
Wagyu is a breed of cattle of Japanese orientation that has a high fat content, and it's very tender. And there's a company in Oregon that actually does it. Wagyu is sort of the American Kobe. All right. Now, competition, if any of you guys are competition cookers that cook briskets, you know what I'm talking about. Average consumer might not. But this is the Cadillac product. And I special ordered some product, got too much, decided rather than return it, I'd sell it. And it's become a regular item for me. I kind of accidentally got into that, but by helping my customer, it helped me see, well, wow, I can sell this product. I can help people that want something a bit more. One problem with the big box guys is they'll have something one day and not the other. And briskets is a prime example. I keep choice briskets too. The Packer, what we call a Packer brisket. Again, these hardcore guys that like to smoke product, they're looking for the Packer because they want to take the point, make burn ends, and they want to slice the flat. Well, you go to a big box store, one day they have them, one day they don't. So they can't depend on them to always have the product consistently. That's a big problem with a couple of the big box chains, is consistency in their product line, because they'll move with the markets. They'll change. If it doesn't meet their profit, their profit ratio, it just goes away and they sell something else. That's just the way they work.
Well, you're talking to us with your headphones on here in our Nooga radio station, but under those headphones are two ears. And as a small businessman, those ears are tuned to the customer who, of course, reflects the larger culture, interest in certain foods and certain trends in culture. Come to you, and as a small businessman, Don Raines of Don's Meats, you can detect those cultural changes, you might say, in the gustatory aspect of culture. Mm-hmm. The taste aspect. And so being small and able to respond to one request, it lets you experiment more readily than if you were a big business. There was a whole department that helped meat decisions and the meat purchasing department of a large chain.
Right.
That's not going to be one very responsive to these subtle changes that you can detect at the retail level. You're also at the retail level.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, absolutely.
You're more responsive.
Absolutely. You cannot walk into the big box guys and say, hey, I want to try this, because they don't even place their orders. Their corporate buyers place their orders. They just sell what comes. They don't make those decisions. where I can make a spot decision right then and say, yes, I can do it, or no, I can't.
And you have every interest to do it right, because you are the man who makes a profit. As the owner of Don's Meats, Don Raines, you are the man who makes the profit. And in a way, everything's on the line for you. Every day is at risk. You have not just employees and inventory, you have the risk there as well. And if the risk pays well, you make a profit. You have more business of that kind. Word spreads, right?
Absolutely.
Don's has this special meat.
Yes.
And so you have much more. You're more involved and more responsive.
Absolutely.
Well, talk a little bit about the idea of capital investment in your business. You hired local people to build your new shop, a great little nice shop there. It's right next to Choo Choo Barbecue.
Mm-hmm.
Also new. What kind of capital investment has that been, and how is the payout going to be on the investment side of that production?
Well, I chose to use local banks. We paid for the property. We own the property outright. So the only thing I really had to borrow money for was the construction of the building and the parking lot, which gave me a nice advantage because my debt to equity ratios were very good. So banks were willing to talk to me. But I think it's important to keep money in local banks because they'll loan to local contractors, local businesses to help expand their businesses and keep more local people employed. We all grow together. I create more customers by doing business with local vendors, doing business with local banks. It's in everybody's better interest because let me give you an example. If you use some national bank or you use some national guy, then the profits of that, the money sitting in those accounts are in Timbuktu. They're not here. They're helping other people, but they're not helping them here. So if we help people here, we all come up together. Does that make sense to you, David?
I think it does, and I think the listener does too. If you want to give us a quick call to talk with Don Raines, it's 800-8949, 800-8949. Don, one question I want to ask you is about cash versus the tapeworm economy credit card. Credit cards are ubiquitous. You can't really be in business without having a card device at your counter. What is better for you? Why should my listener care about the cash and credit issue? It is for me an issue, and I argue, I do make an argument. So what's your argument about cash versus credit? What's his convenience versus your benefit? How does that work?
Well, I have strong feelings about that, and some of them are business related, some of them are personal, but cash is better for a lot of different reasons. One, we'll have a slight percentage more profit. Okay. That profit goes into my bank. That bank ends up helping other people. So, that's important. That 2% or 2.5% doesn't seem like a lot, but over the course of a year, it becomes a lot of money to help other people and to help with investment, to help growing business, to help to be able to advertise, So, that money's not just going to sit there for, just for me personally. It's going to be filtered into a lot of different things. Now, you want to talk about security and identity theft. Don't use the card, use cash. Cash is disappearing, and if cash were to totally disappear, then there would be privacy issues, right? That you would lose their privacy concerns because everything's going to be in detailed transactions. Do you want the whole world to know every time you spend $5 here, $10 there, then that information be used to pester you with emails, trying to solicit you stuff? You think that doesn't happen? Oh yeah, it happens.
So there's a kind of personal integrity you're suggesting that the listener has if he uses cash. I'm not going to be part of that system, which is a kind of a tax. It's a tax on Don Raines. And it's really a kind of a tax on me because think if everybody went to Don's Meats and said, I want to pay cash, that would be 2% more in local economy.
Right.
And it might be a 2% or 3% reduction in your prices. If you wanted to pass the savings on to the listener,
absolutely,
and your customer, that would happen too.
Absolutely.
But we have that national tax on all of our dealings. It's probably 5%, I'm guessing, but at least 2.5%, as you're suggesting.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in a way, I've sort of playfully suggested, Don, that paying cash is more virile, more masculine. It is satisfying. you pay the man. He doesn't have to, he doesn't have to go to the bank to deposit it. He doesn't have to wait for a report. He doesn't have to pay a tax on it. It satisfies the transaction. There it is. It's in his hand. It's in his little flapper thing in his drawer, and it'll be counted and deposited at the end of the day. It's more satisfying, and in a way, it's more personal. It's more connecting with you, the man I'm supporting with my business.
Yes,
right.
Absolutely.
Should my listener view it that way? That when he shops at your shop, that he's supporting you?
Absolutely, supporting me, my employees.
I don't generally think in that way. That's not. I have to force myself to think in terms of that, but I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
Say, I'm going to go to Don's Meats because I want to support Don's Meats, right?
Absolutely.
When you go to Walmart, you are saying that. You, the listener, are saying that. You go to Walmart, you're saying, I'm supporting Walmart. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's no sin in that. But I would just ask you, is that something you want to do? Or do you want to support a local business, like Nooga Radio, local business, a local meat shop? Do you want to support Don's Meats, or do you want to support Food City? And all these fine American innovative chains with their colorful aisles and fine staff, what they do, though, is they export the profit. They export it. No profit is kept here. There is spending, but the profit, which is the life of the city, is exported.
Absolutely. That was my point with banks, because their banks are not local. They're everywhere. So those profits go somewhere else, then they're invested somewhere else, and that doesn't help us in the long run. So if we're going to grow our economy and have real growth, it's better to keep it local, then we all grow together.
Well, I have the suggestion, Don Raines of Don's Meats, that if we didn't have local businesses, if every business in Chattanooga, like you go down Gun Barrel Road, all the chains, you go to the mall, it's all national. Every one of those shops, those national chains, in highly concentrated national economy sectors of the city. If the whole city were like that, and every business was a national or non-local business, an alien jurisdiction, and if you didn't have profit kept here, you couldn't have a city. The city would somehow dry up. I know that's an exaggeration, but I think to make it in an exaggerated way suggests the problem that we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, would the city totally dry up? Well, maybe not.
Probably not.
but
being dramatic.
But it would do better to keep it local, because the investment happens here. When the investment happens somewhere else, you're just helping other people in other places. When the investment happens here, then that's when you have real job growth. That's when you have real income growth.
And also, if the profit stays here, that's where you might see the cream, the extra part, the especially tasty part of the economy. That goes for the tithe, that goes for charity, that goes for nonprofit organizations, that goes for donations to the Chattanooga Orchestra, things like that, right?
Yeah.
Local school boards can get, local school groups can get funding for charitable giving.
Yeah, we're talking about volleyball, or I did a deal with Saudi Daisy Volleyball.
What are you doing?
In lieu of cash, they're going to take some pork butts and make barbecue. And of course, I get the benefit of the advertising. So we basically traded to make that happen. And we'll do some stuff with Hickson, the schools in the area that matter, where my customer base is at, which is basically Hickson, Saudi Daisy, Red Bank. Not to say I don't have customers that come from Signal Mountain, I do, or customers that come from Ooltewah, I do. But the majority of them, live within, say, 10 miles.
Is that true for most small retail shops? The radius of business is about 10 miles or a bit less?
Yeah, I think if we're talking about places where you shop and eat, yes, I think so. It has to be something really special for you to drive an hour,
And Americans love to eat meat. Is meat being consumed more by Americans, Don, or are they cutting back? What do you say about that?
Well, I'd say there's growth. Cattle herds are growing right now. Prices are stabilizing. Demand overall is good for proteins.
What about grass-fed beef, specialty beef? What about that?
Slower growth market, but in the next 10 years, you're going to see more and more of it. People are conscientious about it. To me, that is still in its infancy, and it will take a little more time to mature, but it's heading in that direction.
And the idea is that the grass-fed beef is somehow different from corn and grain-fed in the in the mass meat market.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you got to be careful though. You go to some of the chains, and you know, you ask for their grass-fed products. It could come from Australia. You need to know where it's coming from. A lot of this grass-fed is Australian, may not be product of the United States. So be careful about that.
Don Raines, thanks for joining us.
All right.
Don Raines runs Don's Meats on Hickson Pike. This is David Tulis. We're here covering local economy and free market, urging you, the listener, love your neighbor, buy local. Brought to you by Nooganomics.com, by the writer, the blogger with the biggest pen. That's me, David Tulis. Thanks for joining us.
Nooga Radio, AM 1240, 92.7 FM.